Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the glittering facade of Hollywood's golden age. Have you ever truly considered the hidden machinery, maybe the shadowy figures pulling the strings, or the profound personal costs behind all that manufactured glamour? What if the dream factory, as we often imagine it, had a dark, complex shadow side? One built on, carefully constructed illusions and unspoken compromises.
It's a compelling question, and often overlooked.
Yeah.
Because while we readily celebrate the iconic stars, the people who captivated audiences, the architects of that stardom, and the intricate, sometimes, let's say, morally ambiguous systems they built, while they remain largely unexamined, their stories are woven deep into the fabric of Hollywood, yet they rarely see the light of day.
And that's precisely why we're undertaking this deep dive into the world of Henry Willson. Now, that's a name you might not instantly recognize, but he was a figure who was absolutely pivotal and, frankly, undeniably controversial in shaping the very landscape of 1950s Hollywood. Imagine him as a true master of illusion, a prodigious star maker, and perhaps most infamously a behind-the-scenes fixer who almost single-handedly engineered the archetype of the male leading man, specifically what became known as the beefcake phenomenon. He built careers, sure, but often on foundations of secrecy and pretty intense personal sacrifice.
Yeah, our sources for this deep dive are a fascinating blend. We've got historical accounts, comprehensive biographies like Robert Hoffler's The Man Who Invented Rock Hudson, which is key here, and critical industry analyses. They really look at Wilson's incredibly influential, if ethically fraught career. And these materials, they paint a vivid, if sometimes pretty unsettling, picture of how fame was forged in a very, very different era.
So our mission today is to truly unpack the complex, often cynical system of stardom that Henry Willson embodied. We're going to try and reveal the profound personal sacrifices demanded by Hollywood's illusionary machine, exploring that intricate interplay between, naked ambition, pervasive secrecy, and unbridled power. We'll delve into his audacious and often ruthless methods, his immense impact on iconic figures like Rock Hudson, Tab Hunter, Troy Donahue, and ultimately the ethical shadows that not only consumed his clients, but in the end consumed him as well. It's a story of creation, yes, but also destruction, all wrapped up in the dazzling glitz of old Hollywood.
It really is, and it's a narrative that offers crucial insights into how celebrity was manufactured and controlled in an era vastly different from our own. It really highlights a system that had a very, very high human cost.
It's within this tightly controlled, image-obsessed Hollywood that Henry Willson began to carve out his, unparalleled dual role. He truly was a figure unlike any other, holding immense sway in two distinct but deeply connected capacities. On one hand, he was a formidable star maker. He had this uncanny eye for raw physical potential, albeit often unsourced potential. He molded these individuals into household names. But simultaneously, and just as powerfully, he was a discreet, highly effective behind-the-scenes fixer. It was exceptionally unusual even back then for one person to wield both types of influence with such mastery and, let's be honest, such ruthless efficiency. Most agents focused on talent. Willson, he focused on packaging and protecting an image, whatever it took.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is the context. The social and industry context of Hollywood's golden age in the mid-20th century, particularly the 40s and 50s. This wasn't an era of, tell-all celebrity culture, not even much personal freedom for public figures. It was a time of meticulously engineered control over public perception. Absolute control. Studios and agents fiercely guarded the personal lives of their stars, especially regarding anything that might deviate from the prevailing societal norms. Heterosexuality, traditional morality, that kind of thing. You had the stringent enforcement of the production code, right? Often called the Hays Code. And it wasn't just about censoring dialogue or plot points on screen. No, it extended its iron grip over the personal lives of public figures, too. Studios were terrified. Terrified of public backlash, religious boycotts, anything that could erode their carefully cultivated wholesome brand. So they enforced rigid morality clauses in contracts. Even an implied non-heterosexuality wasn't just a career killer, it was an existential threat to a star's viability. Gone. Finished. This created an environment where secrecy wasn't just preferred. It was absolutely essential for survival in the industry. And that left this huge vacuum, this space for someone like Willson to step in and, exploit.
And it's crucial, really crucial, to point out that this period predated contemporary movements like #MeToo by decades. Decades. This wasn't just about hiding identities or controlling public narratives. It underscored a pervasive culture of sexual assault and harassment that quietly permeated the industry. The power imbalances were extreme, and accountability virtually non-existent.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of Wilson's personal life, it adds a deeply complex layer. He was a closeted gay man operating within this deeply restrictive and frankly dangerous environment. He worked relentlessly, almost obsessively, to obscure not only his clients' sexual identities but his own, often at considerable personal cost and, you imagine, severe psychological strain. This raises a truly important and difficult question. How much did the pervasive homophobia of the era which he personally experienced and internalized, how much did that shape his methods? Was it simply a reflection of the brutal times? Or did his own struggles within that oppressive system fuel his exploitative practices, like creating this tragic cycle where trauma became a catalyst for exploitation? It's clear that the pervasive homophobia created the very environment Willson exploited, and his own identity, paradoxically, gave him this chilling understanding of his client's vulnerability. He knew exactly where the pressure points were.
I think we can safely propose that Wilson's entire career really illustrates what you could call a cynical yet remarkably effective system of stardom, one that absolutely sacrificed authenticity for marketability.
And the core tenets of this system are pretty clear when you look at it. It was built on the meticulous construction of a public image, pervasive control over personal lives, and often the exploitation of vulnerable, often closeted gay actors. It was a business model where, emotional and physical capital were basically traded for fame. Before we dive deeper into the mechanics, just a quick but important clarification for you listening. We are talking about Henry Willson, the talent agent, born 1911, known for his work in Hollywood. Not Henry Willson, the 18th U.S. vice president, born way back in 1812. Important to keep those two distinct, though both certainly left their mark on history in very different ways.
Definitely. Good point. So let's unpack Henry Wilson's early life, because it offers some intriguing clues about the pressures that might have shaped him later on. He was born in 1911 into a privileged New York family. His father, Horace Wilson, was the vice president of the Columbia Phonograph Company. That's a serious connection to the burgeoning entertainment industry right from birth.
Absolutely. These deep-seated family connections immediately placed him within influential Broadway and New York showbiz circles. He wasn't some outsider trying to break in. He had an inherent understanding of the entertainment landscape from a very young age. He was immersed in it. He understood its mechanisms, its power structures, before he even formally entered the Hollywood system. This early exposure to the glitz and the grind, the artifice and the ambition, it certainly primed him for the unique role he would later carve out for himself.
And this is where it gets particularly insightful, I think. Wilson, as a young man, developed an interest in tap dance. But intriguingly, his father apparently viewed this with apprehension, seemingly saw it as not masculine enough, So to counteract this, he sent young Henry off to Asheville School in North Carolina. Specifically, it's reported to masculinize him, with a rigorous regimen of team sports, rugged outdoor activities like rock climbing, backpacking, and what was considered character-building physical exertion.
Right, that parental intervention, particularly the forced masculinization, likely instilled in him an early and profound awareness of societal pressures to conform to very rigid heterosexual norms. This lesson, this internalization of what was considered acceptable, dominant male behavior, would later be meticulously, almost clinically, applied to his clients' public personas. It suggests an early, perhaps traumatic understanding of the very secrets he'd later manage and exploit. He learned firsthand how to present one identity, a proper male one, while perhaps harboring another, and the intense societal cost of deviation. This personal experience, it became a blueprint for the manufactured identities he would create for his beefcake stars. It hints at a deeply ingrained fear of exposure that he would, in turn, weaponize against others.
His path to Hollywood, interestingly, began through journalism. He attended Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and even then, he was already making connections, writing gossip columns for Variety on weekends in New York. Smart kid. By 1933, he arrived in Hollywood. He leveraged key connections like Bing Crosby's wife, Dixie Lee, which gave him immediate access to the elite inner circles of the film industry. He started writing for major fan publications and trade journals, Photoplay, The Hollywood Reporter, New Movie Magazine, giving him an insider's view of how public perception was shaped.
Yeah, and from journalism, he transitioned very swiftly into talent representation, setting himself up in Beverly Hills. Crucially, Wilson was a regular and apparently highly visible presence in the gay bars of the Sunset Strip. This wasn't just social, he was actively scouting, often described as seducing young men to make stars of them and also find pleasure. This reveals the deeply problematic and, predatory pattern that would define his career right from its very nascent stages. He specifically sought out young, often vulnerable, beautiful men, guys who had little power or connections, but possessed the raw physical attributes he deemed marketable. This early pattern really set the stage for a career built on exploiting both ambition and vulnerability.
And there was a profound personal tragedy that seems to have deeply affected him early on, perhaps shaping his trajectory. The death of Trent Jr., Durkin. Durkin was one of his earliest clients and also reportedly his lover, a promising young actor who died in a 1935 car accident at just 19 years old. So young. Willson was only 23 at the time, and he reportedly confided that Durkin was the only man he loved.
That's a huge loss. And this profound loss, combined with the earlier societal conditioning he experienced regarding his own identity, well, it may have created a deep emotional void, and maybe a powerful drive for control. The trauma of losing someone he deeply cared for, especially so young and suddenly, perhaps fueled a desire to control what he couldn't control in his own life. It makes a certain psychological sense, doesn't it? His subsequent actions, meticulously crafting images, exerting pervasive control over the lives of other young, attractive men, can be seen as a complex manifestation of his personal history. It suggests that his predatory behavior wasn't solely driven by cold ambition or a detached business sense, but potentially rooted in these deep-seated personal experiences, an internalization of the very pressures he himself navigated, and maybe a desperate, perhaps subconscious desire to control the destinies of those he brought into his orbit. To prevent similar losses, or maybe recreate a lost ideal, it's a dark cycle of trauma and control, potentially.
From these complex and often troubled origins, Willson developed what was truly an unconventional approach to talent management, earned him that rather ironically fitting nickname, Fairy Godfather of Hollywood. His business card apparently declared with audacious simplicity, "If you're interested in getting into the movies, I can help you. Henry Willson, agent." Direct, huh? And his philosophy was audacious too. He specialized in good-looking men who may not have any real talent, famously asserting quite brazenly that the acting can be added later. His focus was entirely on raw physical presence and marketability, the look.
This really highlights the power imbalance right from the outset, doesn't it?
Right.
He scouted extensively, not just in casting offices, but in places like those gay bars on the Sunset Strip, often enticing young, impressionable men with whispered promises of stardom and a glittering future. He wasn't looking for raw, dramatic talent. He was looking for a very specific aesthetic, a masculine physique, striking looks, and a vulnerability he could exploit. The emphasis was squarely on image and marketability, on packaging a product, not on inherent skill or artistic merit. This was a direct subversion of traditional talent scouting.
And once a hopeful was under his wing, Willson initiated a full makeover, a transformation that went far beyond just, wardrobe changes. He invested significantly in his clients, covering their living expenses, cosmetic makeovers, fashion guidance, and acting lessons. This wasn't just talent management, it was a full-service, all-encompassing recreation of an individual.
And to be clear, these weren't just superficial changes. They were often quite extensive and designed for a very specific effect. We're talking concrete examples like fixing Rock Hudson's crooked teeth. That was a significant cosmetic undertaking back then. He completely revamped their wardrobes, transforming them from unknown hopefuls into, sartorial exemplars, smooth guys. He provided etiquette lessons for interacting with powerful studio executives, taught them how to walk, talk, carry themselves in Hollywood's upper echelons. But most fascinating, and perhaps most disturbing here, is the active reconditioning of actors like Hudson. He provided voice lessons, amplifying their butch aspects to create a deeper, more resonant male voice. He meticulously trained out any gestures or mannerisms he perceived as feminine, ensuring that projected an image of unequivocal, traditional masculinity.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about physical appearance, it was about the active performance of a constructed, often inauthentic identity, designed to fit a very narrow societal ideal of the leading man.
One of Wilson's most distinctive and enduring strategies was what he called the name game. He had an undeniable knack for concocting catchy, often hypermasculine names that instantly conjured an image of ruggedness or suave sophistication. It really became a recognized form of branding, almost his signature, and he openly enjoyed it, even though he was frequently mocked for its sometimes over-the-top nature.
Oh, it was a crucial part of the illusion, a linguistic disguise in a way. Let's walk through some of those notable transformations because they truly embody his philosophy. Roy Scherer became Rock Hudson. I mean, that name practically radiates strength and stability, doesn't it? Arthur Gearlian was rebranded as Tab Hunter, implying an adventurous, desirable figure. Robert Mosley morphed into Guy Madison, a classic all-American leading name. Merle Johnson Jr. inherited the distinctive moniker Troy Donahue, evoking classical heroes, Mediterranean lore. And Orton Whipple Hungerford III, you can see why he changed that one, was drastically rebranded as Ty Hardin. Sounds like a tough, no-nonsense cowboy. Troy Donahue himself summed it up perfectly and quite poignantly when he said, Troy Donahue was a star's name. Merle sounded like I ought to go out in the farmyard and do the chores. It raises that important question: what's in a name when it's literally dictating your entire public persona, shaping perceptions before you even open your mouth, setting the entire trajectory of your professional life? It speaks volumes about the power of pure branding in an image-driven industry.
So this beefcake archetype, the physical alterations, the voice training, the hypermasculine names, it had a dual purpose, didn't it? It was undeniably a shrewd marketing strategy designed to appeal to the widest possible audience. But it was also a deliberate, often exaggerated performance of heterosexuality, designed to actively mask another reality.
Exactly. The comically hypermasculine names, the systematic training to eliminate any feminine gestures, the constant posing for photos with beautiful women, these were all direct, calculated attempts. Attempts to construct an impenetrable public facade. That's what it was about. This persona was intended to deflect any suspicion regarding the actor's true sexual identities in a deeply homophobic era, where even a whisper of deviation could end a career overnight. Poof. While it certainly brought immense fame and fortune to his clients, no doubt about that, it simultaneously confined these actors within a rigid, inauthentic identity. They were compelled to suppress their true selves, their genuine desires, their very mannerisms, which undoubtedly led to significant psychological distress, profound isolation, and often it limited their artistic range to a very narrow prescribed type. They got typecast. The beefcake image in this light became both the key to their professional success and a gilded cage, underscoring the profound personal sacrifices exacted for stardom, and Hollywood's complicity in enforcing these narrow, often damaging heteronormative ideals of masculinity. It created this deep chasm between public persona and private reality.
Right, so beyond his overt role as a star maker, Wilson had this second, equally crucial and far more shadowy role: the master fixer. He worked relentlessly, almost obsessively, to conceal his client's sexuality and indeed his own from the ever-watchful press and the prying public, seemingly irrespective of the personal or ethical cost, were there be. This wasn't just about managing a career anymore, it was about managing entire secret lives, often through coercive means.
And this wasn't just damage control after a scandal broke. No, it was proactive, an integrated part of his star-making machine. He employed incredibly manipulative tactics and cultivated an extensive network, leveraging his dirt on anyone and everyone from studio execs to rival agents, from columnists to cops. He used that dirt to make himself indispensable to the most powerful titans of Hollywood. His knowledge of secrets, of hidden vices, and private indiscretions gave him incredible leverage. It turned him into a power player in his own right. Not just an agent, but a silent force wielding considerable influence. He could make problems disappear. And that made him invaluable in an era obsessed with image.
One of his primary and probably most infamous tools for maintaining this illusion of heterosexuality was his cultivation of what was known as a harem of beards, a revolving cast of attractive women who would accompany his clients to public events, studio premieres, social gatherings, staged photo ops, creating the perfect heterosexual tableau for the cameras.
And the dynamics of these arrangements are utterly fascinating in their complexity. Some of these women, like Terry Moore, were apparently fully aware of the deception, even actively advised their escorts on how to feign conversation, how to touch them casually, how to appear genuinely natural and affectionate for the photographers. They were in on it. Others, surprisingly, found these arrangements preferable. For example, actresses like Debbie Reynolds reportedly preferred Wilson's gay clients, finding them weren't fresh or pushy. Perhaps a welcome relief from the aggressive advances of some heterosexual leading men or executives back then. This raises an interesting question about complicity, doesn't it? The spectrum of understanding among those involved and the various, often desperate perspectives within these elaborate deceptions. But the most infamous and extreme measure Wilson took was when he absolutely compelled Rock Hudson, his most prized client, into a fabricated marriage. Married him off to his own secretary, Phyllis Gates, in 1955. This drastic, life-altering step was orchestrated specifically as public cover, following a serious threat from Confidential magazine regarding Hudson's private life and homosexuality. It was an ultimate act of control, sacrificing a client's personal happiness for the sake of his public image and career. Just brutal.
So Wilson's expertise clearly extended far beyond standard public relations or crisis management. He was truly adept at handling dirty laundry and secrets, especially sex life investigations and the insidious threat of blackmail. He was Hollywood's go-to guy for cleaning up the nastiest messes imaginable, guy you called when things got really bad.
Indeed. To deter blackmailers, he didn't just rely on legal tactics or, polite negotiations. No. He employed extreme, often extra-legal measures. He famously utilized off-duty LAPD cops who operated outside official channels, and leveraged his deep mob connections, a pervasive, if shadowy, influence in Hollywood at the time, offering an extra legal layer of enforcement and intimidation that was both ruthless and effective. His network included notorious enforcers and scandal containers such as Fred Otash, described chillingly in some accounts as leg breaker for the LAPD, someone who could ensure discretion through, well, brute force. There's also lawyer Henry Weiss, adept at massaging the arrests of homosexuals, making sure any unfortunate brushes with the law just disappeared from public record. There's a particularly chilling anecdote recounted in sources. A private investigator, acting on Wilson's behalf, reportedly broke the nose of a lover who had taken sexually explicit photographs of Rock Hudson. With a witness apparently hearing ribs crack during the assault, it paints a vivid, brutal picture of the lengths Wilson would go to protect his stars and his investments.
Wow. Perhaps his most notorious and certainly most ruthless intervention involved sacrificing two of his own clients, Tab Hunter and Rory Calhoun, to Confidential magazine. This was not a move taken lightly, I imagine.
No, this was a truly ruthless trade-off, and it reveals the cold, calculating hierarchy within Wilson's stable of stars. Rock Hudson was his magnum opus, his paramount asset, and his career simply could not be jeopardized. End of story. So, to protect Hudson from being outed in a devastating exposé, Wilson deliberately disclosed damaging information about Tab Hunter's 1950 arrest at a gay party, and Rory Calhoun's past prison years, fed it right to Confidential magazine. In exchange, the tabloids suppressed the much more damaging looming exposé on Rock Hudson's homosexuality. This clearly demonstrates the hierarchy of value in Wilson's system. Some careers were expendable for the protection of the crown jewel. It was a dark, transactional decision that saved one career by throwing others under the bus.
It's clear then that for Wilson, creating stars and managing their scandals were, well, they weren't merely complementary. They were intrinsically intertwined and mutually reinforcing. Two sides of the same very cynical coin.
Absolutely. His FIXER activities were not just reactive damage control. They were proactive measures seamlessly integrated into his entire star-making business model. The meticulous creation of a public star persona, the core of his agent role, absolutely necessitated the equally meticulous and often brutal concealment of their private lives, especially their sexuality, given the rigid moral codes of Hollywood. The FIXER function was, in essence, an indispensable component for the sustained success of his agent role within that morally conservative and deeply judgmental industry. This fusion of roles reveals a cynical system where public image was paramount, and personal integrity, privacy, authenticity, readily expendable. Wilson's full-service approach meant he exerted pervasive control over every facet of his clients' lives, blurring professional boundaries and fostering a dependency that facilitated his exploitative practices. The FIXER role operated as the dark underbelly that sustained the glittering illusion of the agent role, highlighting the systemic corruption and hypocrisy inherent in the studio system of the era, where maintaining the dream was more important than protecting the dreamer.
Okay, let's look at some specific case studies now, starting with Rock Hudson. He truly represents Wilson's magnum opus, doesn't he? He transformed Roy Fitzgerald, described as a clumsy, naive, Chicago-born truck driver with severe dental issues and a rough voice, into an A-list star. One of Hollywood's most beloved leading men. It's an almost unbelievable transformation.
The reconditioning was extensive and relentless. It involved fixing Hudson's notoriously crooked teeth, a significant cosmetic procedure for the time, and meticulously amplifying his butch appearance to fit that desired masculine ideal, often through specific coaching on posture and movement. Despite a somewhat slow start to Hudson's career, he famously needed 38 takes just to deliver a simple line in his first film. Wilson's persistence was legendary. He secured Hudson bit parts, then increasingly prominent roles, leading to iconic performances alongside Elizabeth Taylor and Giant Hudson, even got an Oscar nomination in 1957 for that. And of course, his indelible comedic pairings with Doris Day in films like Pillow Talk solidified his rom-com status by 1960, cementing his image as the ultimate heterosexual leading man.
And maintaining that meticulously crafted heterosexual image required constant, unrelenting vigilance, as we discussed. It wasn't just about putting out positive PR. It involved outright suppressing any hint of his true identity, often necessitating drastic measures like FBI investigations into his private life and deploying those notorious enforcers against potential blackmailers.
Precisely. And the most infamous tactic, as we mentioned, was the arranged marriage to Wilson's secretary, Phyllis Gates, in 1955. This union, orchestrated specifically to quell persistent rumors about Hudson's sexuality and provide a normal public facade, ultimately dissolved after only 3 years. Underscoring the immense personal cost of maintaining such a public deception, Hudson suffered deeply from this, by all accounts. Furthermore, demonstrating the depths of Wilson's manipulation for career advancement, sources indicate Wilson even facilitated Hudson's affair with a Universal Pictures vice president, a strategic, calculated move to secure starring roles for his client, effectively trading personal integrity for professional opportunity. It paints a stark picture of the transactional nature of fame under Wilson's guidance.
Despite their intertwined success and the immense career Wilson built for him, the relationship between Hudson and Wilson eventually fractured beyond repair. Hudson ultimately fired Wilson in 1966, a contentious conversation that ended explosively. Wilson, in a fit of rage and perhaps feeling utterly betrayed, allegedly shouted at Hudson, "All you have going for you is your face. You don't have the talent. I have a jar of acid, and I'm going to throw it in your face." A truly chilling threat, just shocking.
That's a truly unsettling anecdote, isn't it? Illustrating the volatility and deeply possessive control Wilson wielded over his clients. It speaks to the intense, almost pathological nature of their bond and Wilson's deep sense of ownership. Yet what's truly complex, and perhaps quite human, is that despite this bitter, dramatic end and the history of manipulation, Hudson reportedly sent flowers to Wilson's funeral decades later. This suggests a lingering, complex connection that transcended their conflicts, even after such a dramatic and ugly parting. What's fascinating here is the enduring human element, the threads of affection or perhaps obligation that can persist in what was, at its core, a deeply transactional and often exploitative relationship. It hints at the complex web of dependency and dark loyalty that Wilson fostered.
Now, Tab Hunter was another prominent client whose career was absolutely built on image, much like Hudson's, crafted and maintained by Wilson's relentless efforts.
And his story highlights the ruthless hierarchy within Wilson's stable, demonstrating that not all stars were equal in the agent's eyes. To protect Rock Hudson, his most valuable asset, from being outed, Wilson ruthlessly sacrificed Hunter. He deliberately disclosed information about Hunter's 1950 arrest at a gay party to Confidential magazine. This was not a leak, it was a strategic trade. Hunter himself, reflecting on this period much later in his life, acknowledged the persistent rumors that Wilson had given up former clients to protect others, stating he wouldn't be surprised if it were true in his own case. Can you imagine? This raises an important, deeply uncomfortable question. What kind of trust could truly exist in such a system, where clients could be so easily sacrificed on the altar of another's career? While specific details of Hunter's personal sacrifices are limited in our sources beyond the fact of his enforced closeted life, it's abundantly clear that as a closeted gay man, he was compelled to hide his identity. A common and agonizing sacrifice for Wilson's clients, leading to a life lived partially in shadow, even amidst the glare of fame.
Troy Donahue, originally Merle Johnson Jr., was another classic beefcake star, whose name Wilson meticulously crafted, embodying that perfect blend of ruggedness and allure. Donahue himself admitted, quite candidly, Troy Donahue was a star's name. Merle sounded like I ought to go out in the farmyard and do the chores. That says it all about the power of Wilson's branding, doesn't it?
It truly does. But what's particularly notable and often surprising about Donahue's relationship with Wilson is that he and Rory Calhoun were the only two of Wilson's numerous clients to attend his funeral and serve as pallbearers. Only two. This suggests a unique level of loyalty, perhaps a profound personal bond, or even a deep sense of obligation that persisted despite Wilson's controversial methods and his eventual tragic decline into personal ruin. It connects to the complex, often deeply personal relationships forged under Wilson's management, where success was inextricably linked to compromise, intense personal control, and sometimes a lasting sense of obligation, or even a twisted affection that transcended the purely business relationship. For all his flaws and his predatory nature, Wilson was undeniably instrumental in launching these men into a realm of fame they might never have achieved otherwise. And that perhaps fostered a complex gratitude or bond. It's complicated.
Let's transition now to the deeply unethical and frankly predatory nature of Wilson's practices, which extended far beyond conventional talent management into areas that bordered on and often crossed into outright abuse. He was known for manipulating clients and explicitly expecting sexual favors, sometimes coercively in return for his services.
Yeah, Brian Murphy, who's done extensive research into Hollywood history and brought Wilson's story to a wider audience, characterized him as a tormented gay man who preyed on tormented gay men. Murphy observed that Wilson would actively seek out young men from difficult backgrounds, often with broken marriages and absent fathers, preying on their vulnerability and desperate ambition. He would then, as the sources describe, make them sexually service him as a condition of their management, a grotesque abuse of power. Other accounts describe Wilson's methods as an artful seduction of naive ambition, career blackmail, and bodily assault. even stating that young men, even those who identified as straight, would barter their virginity or scruples for a shot at fame under his influence. This raises a truly important and uncomfortable question. How much did his own torment and his struggles with his identity in a homophobic society contribute to his exploitation of others? Was it a grim cycle of abuse perpetuated by a system that traumatized him, turning him into a perpetrator mirroring the very oppression he faced? It's a chilling thought.
It certainly highlights the severe imbalance of power that was inherent in these relationships. Wilson, a powerful agent with deep industry connections and a seemingly limitless ability to make or break careers, held immense sway over these aspiring, often naive and vulnerable young men who desperately sought fame and success. They were, in essence, entirely at his mercy.
His control permeated every single aspect of their lives. Their public image, meticulously crafted as we've discussed, their career trajectory, with roles often secured through questionable means, their personal finances, which he managed or sometimes mismanaged, and even their very identities, which he sought to erase and replace. There's a particularly chilling example of his pervasive surveillance, where he would drive around in the early morning hours, often after leaving a client's place, to check for unfamiliar cars in his clients' driveways, a clear and disturbing intrusion into their private lives. This was designed not just to ensure discretion, but to enforce compliance and absolute secrecy, turning their lives into a tightly controlled prison of his making.
It's important, though, to contextualize Wilson's actions within the broader moral climate of Hollywood's studio system at the time. This kind of exploitation, while abhorrent, wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was, to a degree, a symptom of a much larger systemic rot.
You're absolutely right. This was a period where, as our sources grimly note, actresses were pimped out to movie executives by their agents, and actors married to cover their homosexual liaisons, end quote. Not because of personal choice, but as a condition of their career survival. It reflects a widespread culture of pervasive exploitation and sexual harassment that was prevalent throughout the industry long before movements like #MeToo brought such issues to light. Studio heads, agents, powerful directors often held absolute power over careers, and personal lives were considered commodities. Wilson's methods, while personally extreme and abhorrent in their specific manifestation, can be viewed as a dark, albeit accurate, reflection of the industry's prevailing morality. Its relentless obsession with maintaining a pristine public image, regardless of the human cost involved. It was a Faustian bargain for many, but for Wilson, it became his entire operating model.
Here's where it gets truly striking, though. The profound paradox of Henry Wilson's life. He exerted immense control over others, invested heavily in their careers, propelled them to unimaginable heights of fame. He ultimately met a penniless, destitute end, buried in an unmarked grave for a period.
This outcome is incredibly telling, isn't it? His absolute control and profound investment in his client's career seemingly came at a severe personal cost that he never recovered from. He appeared to pour all his resources, financial, emotional, social capital, maybe even his sanity, into his products, neglecting his own well-being and financial stability. His perceived indispensability was built on this precarious foundation of secrets, manipulation, and exploitation, which inevitably led to his isolation as his methods became more publicly known, and his clients, perhaps understandably, began to distance themselves. His struggles with severe alcoholism and debilitating paranoia, as well as significant weight fluctuations, also significantly contributed to his precipitous decline. What's truly fascinating here is how his relentless obsession with creating and maintaining external illusions for others ultimately led to his own internal and external ruin. The fairy godfather who controlled others' destinies proved utterly incapable of controlling his own. It's a profound, cautionary narrative about the perils of unchecked power and the destructive, self-consuming nature of exploitation.
Wilson's later years were indeed a precipitous decline, a stark contrast to the glittering careers he built for others. He grappled with severe personal struggles, drug addiction, escalating alcoholism that consumed him, debilitating paranoia that alienated him, and significant weight fluctuations, all signs of a life spiraling out of control.
And as his own homosexuality became more widely known within Hollywood circles, the very secret he so meticulously guarded for himself and his clients, he increasingly became a social pariah. His methods, once effective in the shadows, were becoming less viable in a slowly, glacially shifting industry, further contributing to his professional downfall. The very secret that had dictated his life and his business model ultimately became a catalyst for his own ostracization, proving the ultimate hypocrisy of the system he served.
And despite his unparalleled success in creating some of the biggest stars of his era, Wilson ended his life in destitution. A profound irony.
He consistently expended vast sums of money on his clients, reportedly shelling out money for acting lessons and cosmetic procedures for his clients, often without much thought for his own financial solvency. This lavish spending, combined with his personal struggles, significantly contributed to his financial ruin. His problems became public. He was arrested for a DUI, a public scandal for a fixer of scandals, and eventually lost his house to the bank. The man who managed fortunes for others couldn't manage his own.
Henry Willson died in 1978 from cirrhosis,
Yeah.
a direct consequence of his severe alcoholism. He passed away penniless, without sufficient funds for his own headstone.
This tragic end stands in stark contrast to the enduring fame and fortune of the stars he created, many of whom, perhaps understandably, had distanced themselves from him as his methods became more public and his personal life spiraled completely out of control. His grave remained unmarked for a period, a poignant symbol of neglect and forgetfulness, until someone eventually paid for a modest headstone. This final indignity underscores the ultimate tragedy of a life consumed by creating illusions for others, at the immense expense of his own well-being, his sanity, and ultimately his legacy. It's a powerful and somber ending for someone who wielded so much control over the images and lives of others.
Henry Willson's most significant impact on Hollywood is undeniable, though, and it lives on, shaping perceptions of masculinity even today. His singular role in shaping the image of the male leading man truly pioneered the beefcake phenomenon of the 1950s.
Yeah, he established a template for masculine stardom, one that emphasized physical attractiveness, a certain ruggedness, and a carefully constructed heterosexual facade. This model, perhaps surprisingly, persisted in the industry for decades, long after Willson himself was gone. We still see echoes of it today, though maybe the methods of its creation have changed somewhat. It raises an important question, though. To what extent do we still subconsciously expect our leading men to embody a particular type of conventional masculinity, a legacy perhaps unknowingly passed down from Wilson's era?
Beyond his specific creations, Wilson's story serves as a potent and deeply uncomfortable illustration, an illustration of the manipulative and often exploitative underbelly of the studio system during its glittering golden age. It's a stark reminder that beneath the glamour, there were often very dark mechanisms at play.
His methods reveal the extreme lengths to which agents and studios would go to maintain public illusions and control narratives, especially concerning stars' private lives and sexualities. He capitalized on, and indeed thrived within, an industry culture where personal integrity was often sacrificed for commercial viability and public acceptance. For many, it was a Faustian bargain, and Willson was the shadowy broker who facilitated it, blurring the lines between agent, impresario, and, well, dark puppet master. His career is a testament to the fact that Hollywood's dream factory often demanded very real human sacrifices.
A book reviewer, looking back on this period, noted quite insightfully that the effects of Wilson's era linger still.
And that's truly fascinating, isn't it? His story provides a crucial historical lens for examining contemporary issues of celebrity, privacy, power dynamics in the entertainment industry today, the challenges faced by LGBTQ+ individuals in Hollywood, the persistent pressures to conform to certain manufactured images, the ethical responsibilities of those in power who shape careers. All of these have historical roots that Wilson's career illuminates with a chilling clarity. His legacy is a powerful reminder of the industry's complex and often troubling relationship with authenticity, and the enduring human cost of manufactured fame. It's a testament to how a story from the past can offer profound insight into present-day issues and challenges, particularly around identity and exploitation in the entertainment world.
So what does this all mean for us? Henry Willson emerges from the historical record as a figure of profound, almost tragic contradiction. He was a legendary star maker who was also a predator, a builder of empires who died in complete ruin, a tormented gay man who, within a deeply homophobic industry, sadly preyed on other tormented gay men.
Despite the severe ethical criticisms and the ultimately tragic trajectory of his own life, Wilson's indelible mark on Hollywood history is undeniable. He was a master of illusion, a shadowy broker who profoundly shaped the careers and lives of many iconic figures, defining an entire era of male stardom. His story reveals the hidden mechanisms and compromises that underpin Hollywood's glamorous facade, a stark reminder that dreams sometimes come at a very steep price.
The enduring lessons here, I think, underscore the profound human cost of manufactured fame, where personal identity and integrity can be brutally sacrificed at the altar of public image, leaving behind broken lives.
Yeah, and this raises an important question for all of us, really. How do we balance the allure of public image with the preservation of personal identity, especially in an industry that constantly demands a performance, a projection that may be far from reality? Wilson's career is a stark reminder of the ethical responsibilities inherent in positions of power, particularly when dealing with vulnerable individuals whose dreams can be so easily exploited. Henry Wilson's life is a complex narrative about the intricate interplay of personal identity and public image in the unforgiving world of entertainment, a world where the creation of a star often necessitated the systematic destruction of a self. As you reflect on the glittering facade of Hollywood, maybe consider what hidden compromises might still lie beneath the surface today, and at what cost.